This podcast of the Pat Campbell Show is powered by the law offices of John M. Dunn.
We've got Patrick Howley on from Big League Politics, joins us every Monday at this time. Patrick, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Pat, how are you?
Good. All right, I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, Friday, bombshell was dropped that Mueller is going to be coming out with an indictment, possibly an arrest, as early as today. First of all, talk to me about the timing of that story and why you think that was dropped on Friday and what it was meant to eclipse.
So this came out late on Friday, and it came out only a matter of minutes after it was revealed that Paul Singer, was involved in, the Trump dossier. So we have a situation where the Republican establishment and the neocons are actually on the same side as Hillary Clinton and the DNC. It really reveals that there's a bipartisan establishment effort to hurt President Donald Trump. You see the two-party system kind of breaking down because you see the rich people on both sides who are against Trump. So as soon as this came out, only minutes later, it was leaked. And by the way, it's a felony to leak information about a sealed indictment.
Yeah.
So then it was leaked that there's a sealed indictment. And, everybody has been speculating about who it can be.
I want to get into that in a minute. Do you think it was also designed to keep the Clinton uranium story off the front burner over the weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But, that uranium story might end up playing into the indictment that we see today.
Right. Okay, so who do you think is going to be indicted today or as early as today?
It's pretty clear that Paul Manafort is the one who's going to be indicted.
Okay.
The former Trump campaign manager. Right. He's been told that, it's him. I think I would be very surprised. I think we'd all be shocked at this point if it was somebody other than Manafort.
Now, most people that casually follow the news associate Manafort with who?
President Donald Trump.
Okay,
he worked with.
Right, and I want to talk about that because I brought up earlier today, Manafort was well known on Capitol Hill well before Donald Trump ever popped up. In fact, movers and shakers in both the Senate and the House, people on key committee positions, saw him on a pretty regular basis because he was there doing the bidding for Russians and in some cases Ukrainians as well. But he was there. He's a gun for hire. He has no loyalty to a country or a particular party. Whoever's paying him the most is who Paul Manafort's going to be for. And he goes way back with Roger Stone to like the Nixon years too. So this guy's got a track record. But remember, people like McCain, people like Lindsey Graham, my senators, Inhofe in particular, should be very familiar with Manafort on Capitol Hill because he's there doing the bidding of the Russians. What else do you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's a lobbyist, and that's who he is. And I never particularly trusted the guy. He was a placeholder after Jared and Ivanka fired Corey Lewandowski as campaign manager. There was this interim period where Trump was doing very, very badly. There was no organization. This was before Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway came in and righted the ship. But if you remember during that period, there was almost no chance that Trump was going to win. Mm-hmm. He was the Republican nominee, and it was still a laughingstock, the idea that he would actually win. And that was the Manafort era. And from that era, we got Vice President Mike Pence. Now, I talked to Paul Manafort, back in the, at that time. I was working for Breitbart, and, I even told him at the time, you will completely eliminate our impeachment insurance if you choose Mike Pence, because Mike Pence is a Koch brother guy. He's friends with Paul Ryan. The establishment would love nothing more than to push out Trump and put in President Mike Pence. It might be a good short-term fix, but the fact of the matter is we need somebody in that position who's going to be loyal, like a Newt Gingrich or a Chris Christie. And so that way the Democrats will look at the situation and go, oh, God, we can't get rid of Trump because then we'll put in a president who's even worse for us.
So sort of like the opposite of what Biden was. Biden was life insurance for Barack Obama because nobody would want Joe Biden to be the president of the United States.
Right, and we gave that up, when we picked Pence, and that was Manafort. Manafort even lied to Trump. and told him that his plane was stuck on the tarmac and couldn't take off, and held him there for another couple hours until finally he was able to convince him to pick Mike Pence over Chris Christie at the last minute. So that's really the legacy of Manafort.
Okay, so what do you think? What do they have on Manafort though? I mentioned that it's well known that he was a lobbyist for the Russians. That you got to keep it taken into consideration. He's lobbying for foreign governments, right, or foreign interests. Mm-hmm. So what do you think Mueller's got on him? What is and how does this tie into Trump, or does it?
Well, it's very possible that Manafort could have made some kind of wire payment. I've heard 2012, 2013, he did something, some kind of accounting crime, some kind of white-collar thing, and we'll have to see exactly what that was. If it did have to do with the Uranium One scandal, that's a different can of worms because Mueller, as we reported, the story that's up as the main thing on our site right now, Mueller was integrally involved in the Uranium One scandal. You have the Clintons, obviously, integrally involved, and you have the Podesta Group, which represented Uranium One.
That's what I want to talk about, because yesterday I told you I think it's going to be Manafort, and ultimately, maybe not today, but it's going to be the Podesta boys, John and his brother, maybe his brother more so than him. How do the Podesta boys tie into this?
It would have to be, and if Manafort, if one of his aides, Rick Gates, that's a name that's been floated around as somebody else who might be indicted today.
Okay.
Rick Gates actually hired the Podesta Group and Tony Podesta to represent Uranium One. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to start pulling on that thread and you're going to indict Manafort and Rick Gates, then you would be opening yourself up to a major liability. How then could you not indict Tony Podesta?
Yeah. Now here's the problem though with Mueller. Okay, I don't know that Mueller can, because he almost has to recuse himself when it comes to Uranium One, because he was the head of the FBI from 2009 through 2013 when all this crap was going down.
Absolutely, and in fact, he was integrally involved in it, and he was involved in actually delivering the uranium to the Russians on behalf of Hillary Clinton, and he was also involved in looking the other way as a guy from his law firm in a key post in the Treasury Department appointed by Obama approved the Uranium One deal, which sold 20% of our uranium to the Russians, and also the deal that led to the sale of the Port Canaveral cargo terminal to an Arab company that is partnered with the Russian government. So you have a situation where we're selling them our uranium, and you're giving them control over the security at our major port. And Mueller was integrally involved in that process, which involved both the Clintons and Obama. So, Mueller is going to have to face a lot of criticism and a lot of scrutiny if he's going to start pulling threads and indicting people.
What is this $9.1 million payment that Podesta made? Who was that made to? On behalf of whom? What's that all about? What do you know about that?
Well, the Podesta Group was paid to represent Uranium One.
Okay.
You're saying that they paid.
They paid them $9 million.
They paid Uranium One $9 million.
No. Uranium One paid them to represent them. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And was that for the Trump dossier?
No, that was for probably the beginnings of the uranium deal. In 2013, Uranium One was still trying to get the deal done. It probably took them 2 years or so to get it done.
So how does is Debbie Wasserman Schultz dragged into this too?
She's dragged into everything. As long as people don't show up dead before they can testify, I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz is dragged into everything. So we'll see who ends up dead today before the indictments come in.
There you go.
But, yeah.
Patrick, I'm looking at a couple of the stories here. The Anderson Cooper had a fellow on his program the other night, former Clinton campaign staffer, who disputes the figure that he said they didn't spend $9 million on the fake dossier. They spent 6.9. Oh, okay, forgive me. He thinks Hillary and Podesta knew, and he also thinks that Debbie Wasserman Schultz knew. So What is this dossier they're talking about? And talk about the Bill Kristol connection. I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier. And a newspaper that was involved in funding this initially. What is it, GPS?
Yeah, so Fusion GPS is this really sleazy opposition research firm that smears people. They have a very low success rate of getting anything accurate. They're really like the worst people in the business. And, so Paul Singer's money was funneled through the Washington Free Beacon.
Explain who Singer is. People don't know who he is. Who's Singer?
Paul Singer is an establishment neocon donor. He puts up a lot of money for Marco Rubio and for Paul Ryan.
Right. So he was the guy that was funding Rubio in particular in the presidential run, correct?
Yeah, almost entirely.
Okay.
Almost entirely. And in fact, I told Trump that in New Hampshire, and he didn't even know the full scope of what was coming against him at that point. But I made him aware of the fact that Paul Singer was backing Rubio at that time.
So what is this? What did the Beacon look into? What were they trying to do? What is this dossier they're talking about?
This Singer money was funneled through the Washington Free Beacon, which is run by Bill Kristol's son-in-law, and they were paying Fusion GPS to come up with opposition research on Donald Trump. And now what they're claiming is that, they funded the project for a few months, and it did not result in this dossier. Only after the Democrats and Hillary Clinton started funding it did the dossier come about. The dossier being the ridiculous, discredited thing about all the Russia collusion with Trump, and it's all nonsense. John McCain was actually the one who hand-delivered. Stop and think about that for a minute. McCain, supposedly a Republican, okay?
Now you wonder why he's at such odds with Trump. This is the guy that hand-delivered what to whom?
The dossier to Clinton and all around the Senate. They were shopping it around to all these different senators, trying to get some kind of a case going against Trump before the election even happened based on this phony dossier. This is the origin of the entire Russia hoax, really, is this dossier, that there's some kind of massive conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians. It's all nonsense. It's all debunked. It's all discredited. It was lies. It's slander. And it's ruined the reputations and hurt many, many good people. Many Trump campaign staffers who are just drowning in legal bills now for the last year, unable to work, unable to earn. So the people behind this dossier have a lot of explaining to do, and they have a lot of liability, quite frankly. Now, if you're going to tell me that this Bill Kristol linked outfit, the Free Beacon, didn't know that this project they were funding was going to result in something that's Russia-themed, that's what they're claiming, I don't believe it. I don't buy it for a second. I think the Republican establishment and Hillary Clinton and the Democrats were working together as Bill Kristol was working with the Democrats clearly during the election by putting up Evan McMullin and a third-party challenger against Trump in order to help Hillary. It's very clear that we have the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment working together. And by the way, it was Paul Ryan's, strategist, Dan Senor, who was responsible for leaking the Access Hollywood tape.
Right.
It was Jeb Bush who was the first one to come out and condemn Trump over it. So you have the establishment Republicans in bed with the Democrats, and there is no right and left anymore. What it's really about is the people against the corrupt, dirty, filthy establishment in Washington, D.C. And these people should be ashamed of themselves.
You had a number of articles up on Big League Politics about the JFK files. One that caught my attention. What's behind this claim that JFK was shot from the front in the Adam's apple? What's that all about?
Well, God bless Donald Trump for doing this finally, and he's certainly not making any friends in the CIA. The fact of the matter is 95% of the documents have come out. We're still searching through them, but 5% of the documents are still being withheld, and you have a fight between President Trump and the deep state in order to get those out and to get them out with as few redactions as possible. So we're all hopeful that Trump is going to be able to win that battle. We don't have a smoking gun yet in terms of what's been found in the documents that have come out, but what we do know is that the deep state in 1964 was circulating a document, a memo, with quotes from a guy citing the Surgeon General's report, which has never been released, saying that Kennedy was shot in the Adam's apple from the front. That matches with photographs that we have showing that there was a bullet hole in the windshield that clearly came in from the front. And this goes along with the Zapruder film, which obviously shows that when Kennedy was hit, his head went back and to the left, as Kevin Costner said in the movie. So, it's very, very difficult to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald could have made that shot from the book depository building. One of his last words to the public was, "I'm a patsy," and it looks like he probably was.
Interesting. So who do you think they're trying to... There's been some speculation that George Herbert Walker Bush, because he's still alive, they're trying to protect him. What might his involvement have been?
Well, he has a lot. He knows a lot as CIA director and somebody who was very involved in the deep state for a long time.
But unlike other people of his generation, he doesn't remember where he was on the day Kennedy was shot. Isn't that odd?
Yeah, well, he's too busy grabbing women from behind, apparently.
Don't get me started on that. The fact that was called a sexual assault, which in people's minds is synonymous with rape. Meanwhile, you had, who's the guy? Halperin over at MSNBC, who's accused of sexual harassment. He's groping women's breasts. He's rubbing his genitals against women. And how is that considered sexual harassment? But what Bush did is allegedly sexual assault. Give me a break.
Yeah, the sexual assault thing is strange, but certainly what you're going to see is...
No, in fact, it wasn't assault. They said he was sexually harassing. That was the terminology they used, sexual harassing with him. That's more than harassing. That is assault.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of Democrats and people connected to Bill Clinton starting to go down for sexual assault, including Kevin Spacey yesterday, who's...
I talked about that. Kevin Spacey, it's been well known that he's been a homosexual, okay? But I've been waiting for his name to come out because there's a lot of allegations that he is what we call, and words mean things, he's a pederast. He's a homosexual who preys on post-pubescent boys. This is the same problem we've had in the Catholic Church that hasn't been addressed. And this is the dirty secret. And Corey Feldman has almost been destroyed for pointing this out and telling the truth.
It happens all over Hollywood, Pat. And, I don't know if you can imagine this, but before I was an acclaimed journalist, I was a young person who wanted to be a writer in Hollywood. And this is actually a true story. One time there was a guy who was some kind of professional guy. I wouldn't call him a manager, but, he knew Kevin Spacey. He was tight with Kevin Spacey. And so he was telling me, you can meet him. You want to meet him today? I said, yeah, sure, I'll meet Kevin Spacey. Why not? He's a famous guy. I'm trying to be a writer. He goes, all right, but here's the deal. I was about 18, 19 years old at the time. He goes, when he meets you, he's probably going to come over and put his hand right on your crotch. I said, well, I'd rather not meet him then, my friend. I don't think that sounds like what I want to be doing on a Tuesday afternoon.
No, not on any day. Not on any day for that matter. Yeah, that's weird.
That was what was relayed to me. You want to meet him, then that's what's going to happen. So it was an open secret.
Wow.
That was everywhere.
All right, Patrick. If people want to find out what's going on over there, where do we send them?
BigLeaguePolitics.com.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next Monday.